So artificial attachments, Vanessa and I, we both come from an eating disorder background in terms of our work with clients. And this is a term that we started to use just in terms of talking about how food behaviors can kind of step in and create a certain amount of room for different types of regulation, whether that be a sort of upregulating or downregulating. That was the language that we started to use to essentially talk about maladaptive coping skills with food and eating behavior. But it sort of turned into a larger exploration of all the different types of artificial attachments in our world right now. More specifically, over time, we started to think a lot about how technology, especially with generative AI and ChatGPT becoming more and more of a source of kind of therapeutic intervention, that just became a natural extension of the term. So today we're going to start with just kind of talking about our need as human beings to be understood and known on a deep level, and then just the way in which our modern world creates a real lack of connection, as we've seen the Surgeon General in 2023 declared this epidemic of loneliness, which I'm sure we've all seen in our offices and in our life beyond our work with clients. So just the high demand for these kind of substitute attachment figures will continue, it seems to be the case. This is a quote from Erich Fromm in his book, The Art of Loving. And the quote reads, "The awareness of human separation without reunion by love is the source of shame. It is at the same time the source of guilt and anxiety." So if any of you are familiar with Fromm's work, he was a Jewish, German-born psychoanalyst, psychologist who immigrated during World War II to escape the Nazi takeover of Germany. So he obviously understood a lot about what it means to face alienation and that kind of massive separation between people and feeling their importance and their inherent value. Other quotes from Fromm that seem to be important, especially in this current time, he really viewed conformity as a way to relieve the anxiety that springs from our separateness. And he described what he called a sense of oneness, and that if we don't have that sense of oneness, we'll often kind of, in lieu of that, move towards a sense of sameness. So we see that a lot, right? The people who are wanting to belong and not feel alienated oftentimes will seek out feelings of sameness as opposed to that true deep sense of belonging. So as clinicians, that seems like more and more, it's really the work that we're required to do with clients is kind of remind them of their inherent value and just how important it is to be in this world outside of production or what we're providing for other people. So this kind of real, authentic human relationships that really kind of builds resilience and confidence and security in our relationships with each other. That's kind of what we, Vanessa and I, term authentic attachment. When we're looking to these kind of artificial attachments to kind of fill us up or to mitigate those upsetting feelings, what we're really needing is that more authentic experience of being truly in relationship with another in order to go through the process of healing and change. So let's talk about attachment as it relates to just the experience of being human and how we find safety. We just want to underscore how attachment is really, I love to look at it in this way on sort of a graph where we can kind of plot ourselves in different areas, maybe lower on avoidance, higher on anxiety, or hopefully if we're securely attached, low anxiety and low avoidance, that we're looking at patterns with our clients, not really fixed states of being. And that is, we can even move around on this graph dependent on the person who we're in relationship with. But overall, seeing those patterns of behavior in our clients, they can lean into one quadrant or another, depending on oftentimes their early relationships or even their current state of being. So this is just a little visual of kind of some of the the items or the things that we're calling artificial attachments, how they can look and what they can manifest as. So oftentimes in our work, we're looking at clients' relationships with food and eating, but you can also think about use of social media, how we're looking to, if we're in sort of a deactivated state, kind of numb out feeling, or if we're in more of a hyperactivated state, what we're seeking is sort of comfort or reassurance that media can really fill in some of that for us too. And also with eating disorders, sometimes you'll see compulsive movement or exercise kind of filling in some of those gaps as well. Obviously, substances can do this, and technology, just the automation of our world, can kind of further disconnect us in many ways. And as I mentioned, AI or generative AI kind of chat models. So this is how we're defining artificial versus kind of authentic attachments if we haven't nailed that home enough. So artificial attachments, primarily transactional interactions that rely on the use of technology, substances, or other mitigated experiences of being connected. And so it creates kind of a sense of artificially being fulfilled, but it doesn't really provide an adequate experience of being in relationship with another. And then conversely, authentic attachment being primarily relational interaction that focuses on more spontaneous connection between two or more people, kind of a collective experience of being in relationship with another person or persons. And this can be in real life, but it can also be through the use of a conduit like technology, but just it provides a genuine feeling of fulfillment. So one of the, our earliest kind of discussions with one another about the idea of kind of an artificial attachment, if any of you are familiar with Harlow, he's an American psychologist, kind of well known for his research in social isolation, dependency needs, and maternal deprivation. He has what is now a pretty controversial study that many of us learn in school about his work with rhesus monkeys, baby rhesus monkeys that were taken away from their mother at birth and really deprived of touch and provided with a wire-framed mother. That one was draped in kind of a cloth material, the other provided a bottle of milk, but was just the wire frame. So in those experiments, time and time again, the baby monkeys really preferred the comfort of the cloth mother. Though they would go to the wire mother every so often for milk, they really asserted in those kind of behavioral experiments that there was a contact comfort that the babies were looking for. And that kind of helped to further explain kind of how attachment developed. So, the monkeys always preferred the cloth mother, which as humans really speaks to this kind of primitive need for comfort and connection. And that really seems to speak to a lot of what we're facing in this really highly digital, increased with technology world. And so in terms of attachment sort of being the result of being fed, which many researchers had kind of speculated before, this research kind of underscored how much that kind of emotional desire for closeness and comfort really drives our attachment. And so it kind of brings up this poor little baby monkey. Makes me sad to even see. It kind of brings up the question, what is love then? Is it contact comfort? Is it food? Is it emotional connection? And our best guess is really that it's sort of a mixture of all of these elements, right? And so it's easy to understand how food might be substituted or other things like technology if there's a lack of love and connection, because that's so deeply embedded in our early caretaking experiences. So as clinicians, this is oftentimes when we see someone in therapy where these artificial forms of finding security or regulation are starting to break down, and people are kind of becoming more aware of, I need something deeper to kind of help me with this feeling of aloneness or depression or anxiety, because I've really gotten myself to a breaking point, and those things that used to work, they just don't really work in the same way. And there is a kind of underlying understanding of, I do need something deeper or to be known. And that's, oftentimes, sadly, someone's first experience of an authentic attachment might be in therapy. or it definitely might be something that sets off their desire and drive and sense of ability to seek out those types of relationships. So in taking a closer look at that, let's kind of move into the ways in which technology is really falling short in some ways of providing that kind of sense of belonging and connection. And Vanessa, I think you can kind of take from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think, Kate, you're being not somewhat generous in sharing that clients will come to therapy with that awareness already that their artificial attachments are breaking down. I actually find that a lot of the work is trying to get them to see that the artificial attachments are breaking down and they're not serving them. I see a lot of like bouncing from, different coping mechanisms, hoping one will work, and then a lot of judgment on oneself when they're not working. So I actually think a lot of the work happens in like highlighting that these are artificial and maybe there's something deeper that is missing. Just to follow up on that. But yeah, so talking about, we've been talking about proximity seeking here this whole time, but just to back up a little bit, I never thought I would be having these conversations. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but the world feels stranger than fiction these days. If you would have told me that we're sort of playing out and living out the movie Her, I would have not believed you. It's kind of shocking, but it is what like Tressie mentioned, it's the future. And that's the response we often get. We're just kind of we're moving along on this like moving sidewalk, and it's really important for us to reflect on how to help clients ourselves find moments of getting off. So anyway, just to name that, it feels like we're in a sci-fi movie. But yeah, we're talking about proximity seeking and safety seeking. So we're talking about the need to find and hold on to a loving person or someone who will keep us safe emotionally and physically. And in the best of circumstances, both. Science of attachment is related in many ways to how we adapt in order to stay close to caregivers. So all of the ways in which we're like finding our clients or ourselves desperate to feel better, feel safer, that's all very adaptive. That's why, we're talking here about all of these artificial attachments in a very non-judgmental way, because we need them. We need to find ways of regulating our nervous system in really stressful times. And I don't know if anyone with their clients is not having these conversations, but it feels like every single session lately has hinted at like how unstable the world is, and how it's affecting our nervous systems.